Hi YouTube, and welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking all about these little guys. This is Sophia. She is a leopard gecko. We're going to be talking about just some basic information on these animals and a little bit of a care guide on if you want to keep one of these as a pet, how you would do that at home. Before we get started, as always, we want to give a huge shout out to all of our patrons who joined our Patreon and are pledging to help us every single month by giving your donations and support to our rehab and rescue. We are so incredibly grateful to everyone who is reaching out, donating, sending us stuff, and helping us to care for these beautiful animals that we call reptiles. So I had to put Sophia back because leopard geckos can be a little jumpy when they're being handled, and they're very delicate animals. So it is important when handling these animals that you make sure you have a grip on them at all times, because if they were to jump out of your hands and fall, it is very easy for them to break things. So these are not great pets. I don't suggest them for young children who are going to be real handsy with them. They are a beginner reptile, but I do not recommend really any reptile for small children. I just wanted to get that out there right now. I have a lot of people who message me about which reptile they should get for their small child. Definitely not a leopard gecko. So the scientific name for leopard geckos is Eublepharis macularis. Say that 4 times fast. They are from the family Eublepharidae, and they are commonly nicknamed Leos. These adorable little geckos can be found throughout Asia and the Middle East, and they are typically terrestrial in drier grasslands. Hatchlings typically weigh anywhere from 10 to 12 grams, and adults can reach anywhere from 8 to 10 inches long, including their tail. They typically don't reach sexual maturity until about 3 to 4 years old, and they will not typically breed before 2 years of age. Also keep in mind, if you are trying to house one of these animals, they do live for 20 plus years. Most reptiles live for a very long time, so keep this in mind when considering purchasing one of these animals for your own personal pet. They are a lifelong pet. Leopard geckos are considered crepuscular, which means they come out during the twilight. This is why it is so important to make sure you have a daytime-nighttime cycle for your reptiles to make sure they are in sync with their circadian rhythm. So another really cool fact about leopard geckos is that they lack the adhesive called lamellae, which allows them to climb smooth surfaces like other geckos can. What the adhesive lamellae is basically just little microscopic hooks that allow geckos to cling to smooth surfaces. Now that we've gone over some basic information about leopard geckos, let's get into some of their behavioral traits, such as tail waving, tank climbing, and chirping and squeaking. Starting with tail waving. Tail waving is when a leopard gecko is showing its presence to another leopard gecko, or sometimes males can do this to females to get her attention for mating. Males also do this as a form of dominance or as a form of defensiveness. So tank climbing or nose rubbing can be an indication that something is off in their enclosure. Maybe things were moved around and they don't like it, or they're stressed out. But also it could just be a way of the leopard gecko trying to explore outside of its enclosure. And since they can't climb the glass, they kind of just like move around next to it. But this is all indications of either exploration or something is wrong in their enclosure. Squeaking or chirping usually indicates that something is not right with your leopard gecko. This could mean the gecko is in pain. It could mean that it's unhappy with being held, or it wants to be let go or put down. So if your leopard gecko is making noises like this, it is not a good sign, and try to figure out exactly why this is happening. Some common medical issues that can happen with leopard geckos are improper shedding, intestinal impaction, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, metabolic bone disease, parasitic infections and dysocia, also known as being egg bound, and any kind of like wounds, burns, or abscesses on your leopard gecko. So now moving on to what kind of habitat your leopard gecko is going to need if you so choose to have this animal as a pet. So leopard geckos don't need a huge enclosure, but they do need a lot of things in their enclosure. Multiple hides, basking spots. I use basking stones, and I really like to use a coconut substrate. So that if they wanted to burrow, they could. Sometimes they will burrow. I also like to keep anything like peat moss or coconut husk or sphagnum moss inside a couple of the hides. And I keep those moistened for humidity so that when they're shedding, they can make sure to get their shed off properly because they do have issues shedding, especially on their toes. And this often results in geckos losing the tips of their toes, the tips of their tails, which their tail does grow back, so that's not like a super huge deal, but it is a big deal if they lose their toes. They're not super excellent climbers, so whatever you put in their enclosure, you need to make sure they're able to climb up on top of without having to scale it. This is going to allow them to have multiple places to explore without them being put in danger. Fall from a leopard gecko from something high up can really damage the leopard gecko and hurt it severely. So keeping things low to the ground that they're able to just kind of climb on top of, and if they fall off of it, it's not a big deal. Those are the kinds of things that you're going to want to put in their enclosure. Personally use basking stones on their hot side because my leopard geckos love to bask. I do not keep a water dish in there with them. I spray the tank 1 to 3 times a day, and they get their water from the moisture inside the tank. Humidity should be pretty low, around 40%. So it's not super hard to keep leopard geckos because you don't have to keep the humidity super high up. Geckos, much like almost every single reptile I can think of, needs an ambient temperature. They do regulate their body temperature outside in their environment, so you need to make sure you have multiple different temperatures throughout their enclosure. Their cool side is going to range anywhere from 75 to 80 degrees, and their warm side should be anywhere from 80 to 85 degrees. They do need a basking spot. Again, I use stones in mine. You don't have to use stones. It just needs to be something that absorbs the heat that they can lay on, and that should be around 90 to 95 degrees. So I currently have 2 leopard geckos, Sophia and Dorothy. Before I got them, they were already bonded and have been cohabbing for about 6 years. I did not want to separate them when I brought them home because that's just what they were used to. I don't recommend cohabbing any reptiles, but you can do it under the right circumstances. You just really have to know what you are doing. So now that we've talked about behavior and enclosures and husbandry, let's talk a little bit about diet. So these animals are insectivores, which means they're going to need a wide range of different insects. I feed mine some dubia roaches, crickets, superworms, mealworms, just a plethora of different kinds of insects, so it keeps their palate broad. Sure to dust all of my insects in both Repti-calcium and Repti-vitamins. This gives them the vitamins and minerals they need to sustain a healthy life, to avoid metabolic bone disease and other health issues they can get. I keep a stockpile of this stuff at all times, along with their insects they eat. If you're looking for something that you're going to want to play with or handle a lot, this is not the animal for you. Although they are tolerant of being handled often, it's not something that I recommend doing with the leopard geckos. I don't think it's good for their stress levels, and I don't think all around they're a super handleable animal. That's just my personal opinion. I think that these animals make great pets for a visual aspect, but other than that, they are not to be played with on a regular basis. They are super small and delicate, and they can easily break their bones. So I think that the less you handle them, the less likely they are to have an accident. All around, I do recommend leopard geckos for beginner reptile hobbyists because they are really easy to take care of. They're super cute. They do have actual real eyelids, which is really rare on any reptile, but especially lizards. I think that makes them very interesting looking, and I think it adds to their really cute features. Okay guys, so that is all I have for you today about leopard geckos. I hope this video was a little informative for you. I am just one person, and this is just one video on a care guide to leopard geckos. Make sure you're doing your full research before buying an animal. look elsewhere to everyone else's videos, decide what works best for you, and then do things that way. So thank you again for joining our channel. Make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button. And if you want to become a patron or figure out ways to help us in our reptile rescue, there will be a link down below that you can click to our link tree, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media platforms, and make sure you don't forget to subscribe.